class that both myself and Stu are high on is this offensive tackle class. It has multiple guys who are first-round players, and we even had 4 go in the top 10 of our latest mock draft. But how good really is it? We'll take a look at some of the names, discuss how good they are. Maybe they're better, on par, maybe worse than classes that we've seen previously over the last couple of years. But how good is it compared to classes that we've evaluated previously? Stu, you are our resident offensive tackle expert. I know it's your favourite position to talk about, so I'm going to lean on you heavily for this one. I'm going to let you lead the discussion. I think the best thing to do here is maybe let's talk about some of the offensive tackles in this 2024 class, and then we'll compare it to some of the previous classes in a little bit.
Yeah, so for me, there's a lot of prospects that I think are going to be in that first round discussion, and let's start with Olu Fashanu. I think he is a guy I would have had as my tackle 1 last year in the draft cycle. Then he decided that he was going to go back to college. I think that it's not a bad move for him because he was still quite a young prospect at the time, and he has done nothing to suggest that he has made a mistake in doing that. I think that tackles do take that little bit of time to develop at the NFL level. So why not have another year in college just to round things out? He's a guy. He's 6'6", about that 320-pound mark. So he's at the right kind of size that you want to have an offensive tackle. He's He's got the ideal height, weight, length. He's got a right frame as well. He's well proportioned. I think that he's not too top heavy as some of these bigger guys are. He's an athlete. He's a really good pass protector. I think that that's probably something that he's better at than in the run game for me. He's fluid mover. He's got hand strength. He knows what he's doing. He has got that really able to convert speed to power very quickly. He's explosive out of his stance. I really, really, really like Olu Fashanu. I think that for me at the moment he's my offensive tackle 1. But there's a couple of guys that are snapping at his heels.
Yeah, absolutely. He's so good. The above size measurables, as you said. He's got a basketball background as well. If you want to Google highlights of Olu Fashanu playing basketball, ridiculous. Such an explosive player, explodes out of his stance. What can add to his report, which is the list of strengths on his scouting report is absolutely ridiculous. But his kick slides cover so much ground, and he plays with so much speed, both in terms of physically and mentally, because he's so intelligent that he's literally a step ahead on everyone and every snap. He's able to do that because of his physical ability, but he's just so intelligent that he's already worked things out. Such good balance, very good recovery as well. So when he does lose out, he's quick and he's snappy to figure out what he needs to do. Very coordinated. Well, you could talk forever about Olu Fashanu, but there's really not going to be many weaknesses on his report. I'm guessing the guy that is next up on your list would be Joe Alt.
Yeah, Joe Alt for me is next up. I think that he is just an all-round, very solid, very reliable player. He maybe isn't as got the flashes of natural ability that you see in Fashanu, but I think he's someone who's a student of the game. He understands how to play the position very well. He just does everything right. I think that he comes across as somebody who would just be very professional, and has standards and set standards in an offensive line. I think that he has the potential to be one of these guys that you look back who has an exemplary 15-year career, in a franchise. They just keep playing him until he's too old and can't play anymore. As we see with some of these guys, I think it comes across as that kind of thing. As I say, he's maybe not as quick or maybe as flexible as Fashanu. His kick slide, you mentioned about the kick slide of Fashanu. Joel definitely doesn't have that. I don't think he's quite as flexible in the hips and things as well. But he has improved, I think, this year in that he plays that little bit lower. He's got a little bit more bend to his game. He's really just a determined player. You have to be at your best in every snap. He doesn't take snaps off. You've just got to be at your best to get around him. He's a big guy to get around, but he doesn't just rely on size. He's got good technique. He's got good hands. He's able to counter. He doesn't get flustered. If someone looks like they're going to beat him on a snap, he just resets himself, gets himself in the correct position and tries to counter it. And if he does get beat, which is rare, the next snap, he doesn't let it get to him. He just goes back to what he knows. He's got good, solid fundamentals. So he would definitely be next up for me.
Yeah, they are the clear two. Joel is wise beyond his years, really, isn't he? He's 6'8" as well, so he's absolutely a hulking tackle. They are the clear 1 and 2. There's a bunch of others. The conversation, I suppose, gets interesting after this as to how you want to rank them. We're not at the point of doing that yet, but JC Latham from Alabama is almost certainly going to be up there in that discussion, isn't he?
He is. I'm maybe just not quite as high on Latham as some. I do think that he's there or thereabouts in a lot of people's rankings. I do think that Latham at times relies upon being the big guy on an Alabama offensive line. He's got strength and power for days, but I'm not sure he always uses it to his advantage. He sometimes struggles with a bit of quickness at times as well. He's, I mean not his own quickness, I mean defending against quickness.
Yep.
When he's moving himself and getting into sets, he can be, quick enough to do that. But if someone if you've got a bendy, speedier edge rusher against him, he's sometimes difficult to get his feet set quick enough to deal with that. But I think he's got a lot of talent. You don't play on an Alabama offensive line without it. But for me, I think there's still a bit to go there yet for me to be 100% on the JC Latham train. But we see these guys from Alabama with power, size, and speed. They do get drafted early.
Yeah, and I think I'm with you. The reason why he's up in this discussion is because of his tools, right? And it's a position that you quite often see who's big, who's quick, who has the tools to make it, and they do get taken in the first round. And I think JC Latham will be one of them, but I think he has quite a way to go to be an kind of upper tier starter at the moment. I think he lacks a little bit of bend and flexibility. And you mentioned playing against speed, that he just loses it against speed rushers, and it leads to him playing extremely panicked.
He's frantic. He becomes a bit frantic, and his handwork just then goes all out of control. And he tries to rely on, when they say use what he is in his power, and if they're gone, you can't get your hands on them. You haven't got that power.
Yeah, and that links to kind of two things which I have for him, which is I think he's very reactive, that he doesn't really play with much anticipation, which means that he isn't able to add those counters to his game. And that kind of comes from the fact that he plays with his head down far too often, that he needs to get his head up, because it hinders his awareness, and it means he can lose out to rushers, especially when they're crossing his face. He's got a way to go, but I think he probably will be a first-round player simply because of the tools that he possesses.
Teams want offensive tackles. Teams like offensive tackles. They're in an elite position, and when you've got a player who does have things that there's a lot to like, and a lot of teams will think we can mold this guy with a bit of coaching from an NFL offensive line coach, and so I think he does have the tools. I'm just not quite as sold as maybe some of the other guys we've got going around.
Yep, I think that's completely fair. A guy who's maybe testing our patience and testing our ability to evaluate at this point, Amarius Mims. It was a complete punt to talk about in pre-season, because he hadn't played very much, thinking he was going to be the starting right tackle for Georgia this season. Was injured. I believe he's had some surgery, right? And he's on the way back. Difficult evaluation at the moment, but where are you standing on him currently?
We talk about tools again. We come
exactly.
back to it, and I think that's what we have with Amarius Mims. He's difficult because he's not played a lot this year, and that's when you were looking for that tools to develop with Amarius Mims. We see a lot of these guys again who are offensive that teams do take a punt on because they have that raw ability. I think he's going to have to come back and have a really strong second half to the season and play really well to be a first rounder, unless somebody absolutely falls in love with him. But again, we come back to it. We've seen people who they like the tools, they like the big school prospects with tools, and that's what a Mims is for me at the moment.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot of work to do, but that's not to say he can't get there.
Yeah, he is back in training. We'll see, I guess, when he actually gets back on the field. But one thing's for sure, then they're not going to play him if he isn't right, because they don't need to at Georgia. So we'll see how it works for him. He could be one that doesn't actually end up declaring. Where do you want to go to next?
My man,
Graham Barton.
No, not Graham Barton just yet. I've got two. Fuaga.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm still claiming him. Everyone likes Taliese Fuaga now. He's a bit different to the other guys in that he is a bit more of that. I think I described what was the guy who ended up getting drafted by the Cowboys a couple of years ago? Tyler Smith. He's not the same, but I described him as a bull in a china shop at one point, and Fuaga is a bit like that. Although he is someone who's just got a real nasty demeanor, and he loves the run game. He loves smashing into people, but he has leverage and strength as well to anchor well in the pass protection game as well. He is somebody who is proactive. You mentioned about being reactive. He's someone who's very proactive. He knows where to put his hands. He has counters to counters. He's really thick and powerful through that lower body. He uses his legs to drive people off the ball. But when he needs to be, he's got a little bit of the dancing feet as well when he needs to in pass protection. So he's not all about the power. He's got a little bit of finesse to him as well. He is somebody that I really like. He's come on leaps and bounds. He's rising up draft boards. He has played almost exclusively at right tackle, and is that going to count against him in some of these guys who've played at left tackle, which is seen as the
Darnell Wright.
It didn't, and we're going to come on to talking about him, I suspect, when we go into the looking at things. Darnell Wright went very highly, and he was very much a right tackle. So, and we've seen the value of right tackles increase recently. But yeah, Taliese Fuaga is somebody that I really, really like as well. Graham Barton, you mentioned me how much I love Graham Barton. I think I'm going to count Graham Barton as an interior offensive lineman when it comes to it.
That's fair. That's fair.
There's a couple of other names kicking about there as well. Jordan Morgan's a guy who a lot of people like. Patrick Paul, the guy from Houston, is a name that's mentioned. We've talked about him. We're not the highest on him. Ryan's shaking his head there. You're totally out. Yeah, I mean, we talked about him on our last
again,
podcast.
Though.
He's toolsy. So I think that's going to be the top guys, the ones with first round consideration. There might be another ones who sneak in back there, but I think that's probably a bunch at the moment.
Yeah, the two names I would add as sneaky ones to watch out for. Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma is garnering some attention, and Kingsley Suamatea from BYU is another toolsy guy that people like. We'll see what the evaluation comes in at the end of the season, but he could be one that could sneak it. But as we said, this is a pretty good class, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I know we're going to come on to comparing them to the draft classes of years gone by as well. So yeah, let's crack on and let's have a look at that. Just see where they do stack up.
Yeah, so the class is worthy of all the hype that we've just mentioned. So we'll move the conversation on to looking at these previous offensive tackle classes, and then we'll have a look and see where this overall class stacks up compared to them. So let's clarify. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of hindsight here. So let's try and think about what we thought of them as a prospect rather than their NFL careers, because obviously there are some players on this list that we thought very highly of, but for whatever reason, it hasn't quite worked out for them in the NFL. So in last year, 2023, the first rounders were Paris Johnson, Darnell Wright, Peter Skoronski, Broderick Jones, and Anton Harrison. What are we thinking? Higher or lower?
Yeah, for me, it's clearly higher. I think last year, the only two offensive tackle prospects I was really high on was Paris Johnson. Yep. I think he's been okay, and I think that certainly my top two would rank above him at the moment.
Yep.
Skoronski, I was always unsure about whether he was a tackle or a guard, but he kind of fits in there. The only other one that he wasn't even a first rounder that I really liked, which was Dwan Jones, and he was drafted way late. So I think I was off on where he was drafted, but his production has been really good actually playing for the Cleveland Browns. He's probably been one of the best. So I think that the top guys certainly would be better prospects for me. I wasn't a big Darnell Wright fan, if I'm all honest. I didn't have him in my top 5 tackles, so I was really surprised when the Bears took him. So I would certainly have Fuaga as a better right tackle than him at this stage. So probably I would be stacking up this one better than last year. Thinking about prospect-wise, again, we're hindsighting how well these guys are going to do, and who knows, Fashanu might be an absolute bust. You just don't know. But when we're looking purely at what we thought of them as prospects, certainly this year, the top guys are higher rated for me.
Yeah. So higher on 2024 than 2023. What about 2022, which had Ikem Ekwonu, Evan Neal, Charles Cross, Trevor Penning, and Tyler Smith who in the first round?
That's a really difficult one because I think we all really thought, particularly that first 3 guys.
Yeah, the top 3, yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about those 3 guys, and there was a lot of talk. I think they ended up going 5, 6, and 9.
9, yep.
If I think rightly, and we all had them in different orders as well, so it wasn't clear cut. I think ranking them as prospects is very difficult. Actually, I think that there's
close, isn't it?
That is a close class. Who was the one you said was the last one picked in that first round again?
Tyler Smith was the last one.
Tyler Smith, yeah, he's one. He's one. I
Trevor Penning went as well to the Saints.
Yeah, I really like Tyler Smith. I was quite high on him, and again, yeah, that top it would be close. It would require a bit of a sort out if I'm not going to lie on that one and come down to the end of the season gradings and things. But
we're a bit on par.
They'll be on the same mix, I would think.
Yep, no, I would agree with you there. 2021, that had Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, Elijah Vera Tucker, depending on how you want to define him.
Yeah.
The enigma that is Alex Leatherwood and Christian Darrisaw.
This is difficult to do without hindsight because we've had some very good tackles from that group, haven't we? Slater's been excellent, and when he's been fit, Penei Sewell has been very, very good as well. AVT he's been really good since they moved him to right tackle.
Christian Darrisaw's been great at the Vikings.
Darrisaw's been great at the Vikings as well. Prospect-wise, I think that class probably the top 2. Well, certainly Sewell. We all love Penei Sewell.
Yep.
And Slater was right up there as well. So, yeah, I think we might had 2 from that class as the top 2, but the next couple might have been from this class. So, probably higher in 2021 at that very top end.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody in the grand loved Penei Sewell. He was going to be the great shining light from that class.
Is his stock kind of comparable to Fashanu at this point, or do you think we were higher on Sewell?
I think in general people were higher on Penei Sewell.
Yep.
I think everyone had heard and known about Penei Sewell for a long time, and he was this hyped. So I don't think Fashanu has quite the same hype behind him as Sewell did at this point in the draft cycle. I think if you were to say that Fashanu's the Penny Sewell of this year, I think that would be fair. But I think Sewell had a lot more hype around him than Fashanu did in general. But comparable certainly. But I do think that 2021 class probably edges it at the very top end.
Yeah. They're the classes that have been since we started evaluating together. I do want to throw the 2020 class at you, though, because I think it might lead to a little bit of good discussion, which the 2020 class had Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Mackay Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Austin Jackson, and Isaiah Wilson. I think you can probably ignore the last two. Let's pretend that Austin Jackson and Isaiah Wilson didn't get drafted. But those top four, Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Mackay Becton, Tristan Wirfs, probably a good discussion in terms of comparability, I think.
I would agree. I wasn't the most sold of that three of Wills at the time. But that wasn't to say I didn't like Jedrick Wills either. I mean, I did, but I would have had him just do my own thing at that point before we kind of formalised it. He would have been my fourth tackle. I think I probably over-egged things on Mackay Becton. We've all had these prospects. We think, do you know what, they're going to be amazing. And when you look back with hindsight, you go, oh, why did I like him so much? Was it just because he was massive and looked amazing running about at that size? Andrew Thomas had a really shaky start, but has come to be everything I think we thought Andrew Thomas would be. So he was my favourite prospect that year.
He was mine.
Tristan Wirfs has actually been a fantastic player for the Bucks. I had him probably third. As I say, I was too high on Becton. But there is similarities there between this class. You've got the guy who is the left tackle. You've got these big, huge units like Mackay Becton. Again, difficult as prospects. It's so difficult to look back at people hindsight. You think, oh yeah, Becton, he's not going great at the Jets. Yeah, these guys are going to be so much better. But we actually, when I was really high on Becton, and I'll admit that. So, it's difficult when you've got that knowledge in the back of your head, isn't it, to remember back what you thought about them at the time.
Yeah. But what it does show you, so is what four classes there, that we do have good offensive tackle prospects come out most years. Look at the top of each one of those class. They were all prospects that we thought of towards the top of each draft class overall. So it shows you that how valuable they are, because the amount that go in each round, in the first round every year.
It might go in the top 10.
It is. Yeah, it's difficult to also show how difficult it is to transition, because a lot of them didn't pan out. But there's a lot of good. It also shows you that this 2024 class is very good, even at this point, and we've got a way to go. So final verdict, I think, is that this is a very, very good offensive tackle class.
I think the verdict is that it's a good class, but we don't know which one of them will be good.
That perfect. That sums up the podcast perfectly. That's it. That's the coverage for the rest of the year. Every prospect, just we're not sure, could be good. But if you're listening, listening to us talk here and you have an opinion, as we said before, leave it down in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. How good is the 2024 offensive tackle class compared to the others? Are we maybe sleeping on a prospect? Is there a prospect in the 2024 class that maybe we haven't mentioned that you're a big fan of? Leave it in the comments. We'll interact with you.